Most people think that President Nixon's criminal activities were limited to wiretapping and spying on the competition. But his greatest crime came on August 15th, 1971, when he severed the last ties between the dollar and gold, when he ended the Bretton Woods system.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
The Federal Reserve is raising the
Fed
interest
is
rate
set to raise interest rates.
Highest inflation in 40 years.
Listen.
The world reserve currency is the dollar. It's collapsing against assets like the S&P index, like real estate, like gold, like art. If we had sound money, the dollar wouldn't collapse. But you've probably seen this chart. This is the dollar collapsing against consumer goods. Consumer goods, the dollar is 95% weaker. Means consumer goods are 20 times more expensive today than 100 years ago.
Borrowing than to burden the current generation with taxes. We saw debt rise dramatically in the late 2000s after the global financial crisis, and we saw debt rise again during COVID. That debt, in some ways, is a contingency plan that we use to smooth out otherwise what would be big shocks to our economy.
The problem is that we keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing day in and day out. So we're not borrowing for emergencies, we're not borrowing only for long-term investments, we're borrowing for immediate consumption. And any borrower, whether that's a person or a business or a government, if you borrow for immediate consumption with no long-term benefit, you're actually deteriorating your financial or fiscal future over the long run.
This cup of coffee, in a way, encapsulates the drama of the Venezuelan crisis. Today, you need this amount of money to buy this cup of coffee. But the inflation has been so out of control in Venezuela in recent years that today, this is the equivalent of what I had to pay 15 years ago for a one-bedroom flat.
I don't save dollars. I save gold, silver, Bitcoin, Ethereum. And I don't just say I like the stuff, but it seems to hold its value. And, Buffett called Bitcoin rat droppings or something like that. I'm going, well, he's a stock guy.
Belief is that Bitcoin will replace fiat currencies in our lifetime?
Yeah. I at some point, you're not going to want a government-controlled currency because it does what this happens. You get a boom and then you get a bust, and then the Fed has to adjust. And the boom and bust is all determined by some political candidate who happened to win. Mm-hmm. And then they just say, okay, we're going to spend a bunch of money. Mm-hmm. And then you get a boom, and then all of a sudden you get a huge bust because the Fed has to say, wait, we're going into inflationary times. We got to raise interest rates, and so all of a sudden you've got a bust.
Aprobada la ley de Bitcoin.
Lawmakers in El Salvador broke into applause after voting to approve Bitcoin as legal tender on Wednesday, making the Central American country the first in the world to fully adopt the cryptocurrency.
Bitcoiners around the world, the time has come. We are ready.
Using Bitcoin to buy clothes, snacks, even the daily newspaper, instead of US dollars is now an option to the people in El Salvador, as the country becomes the first in the world to adopt the volatile crypto as its national currency.
Bitcoin is a solution to that.
It's hard to isolate what in particular about Bitcoin is so amazing, but if I had to name one thing, I would say it was the distributed network. This is kind of an amazing thing because it's essentially immortal. It can exist in trillions of copies all over the world. What that means essentially is that it can't be destroyed. I mean, you could apply every regulator, every bureaucrat, every politician, every central banker in the world, assign it to destroy the blockchain, And they could spend 24/7 doing this, smashing copy after copy after copy, and destroy trillions of copies. But so long as there's one left somewhere, and there always will be, it can reproduce itself instantly and come into existence of billions and trillions of times over again, virtually instantly. What this means is that the blockchain itself is more powerful than all the governments in the world combined many times over. This is huge. We've never had a tool this powerful to beat back the despots of the world.
Throughout most of the convention, I couldn't find anybody that shared a few of the concerns that I have about Bitcoin, such as being a deflationary currency. That was until I met Chris Ellis. Chris, tell me about the concerns that you have.
So, Bitcoin right now is still an experiment, as are most cryptocurrencies, and the price is mostly supported by a speculative sentiment. And that's because markets are forward pricing mechanisms. People are looking at the information and they're buying on the basis of what they believe other people will do in the future with that information. And I think that a lot of people, having spoken to a lot of merchants as well, they are telling me anecdotally that people are not spending their Bitcoins. So I am concerned. I think the economic side of Bitcoin is probably the weakest. That's why we need a lot of these alternative cryptocurrencies to play around with some of the parameters. But we should consider this an experiment for now.
Average temperature throughout the year in Bratsk is only 3 degrees Fahrenheit, which definitely helps to cool all of the GPU power needed for the process. BitRiver has roughly 20 Bitcoin come in per day, helping Russia be one of the most powerful countries in Bitcoin mining.
So guys, now we are here inside this geothermal volcanic energy, fully green energy, I don't know, Bitcoin mining station. It's wonderful. I never seen such an amazing Bitcoin mining plant. It's really interesting.
Something that was also intuitive and accessible to people. And listen, I'm a huge fan of Bitcoin, and I'm very happy for proof of work and the fact that it's expensive, and that's what basically keeps me sleeping at night, right? Knowing that my Bitcoin will be secure. And at the same time, we have to acknowledge that the everyday person isn't going to pick up a 20-page manual and learn how to set up a server in their home to mine Bitcoin, right? If they want to have a good shot at it. And so Pi uses a completely different consensus algorithm that essentially allows everyday people to actually participate in the process of securing the currency and to mine the currency from the convenience of a mobile phone application. And so basically what we're doing is we're taking the Stellar consensus protocol. And part of this, by the way, is we actually did a survey of different consensus protocols, right, to understand what would be the most user-friendly, what would be the most easy to use and access. And Stellar kind of rose to the top. And the way that Stellar works, it's based on something called Federated Byzantine Agreement.
I have to switch the camera right now. Waiter, we would like to pay.
Do you accept Pi? Maybe? Yes. Great, man.
Okay, can you please give us your ID, your Pi ID? Okay.
So now you'll see that the transaction is pretty straightforward.
Confirm, the transaction goes, and
as you can see, you received Pi. It says.
And the Pi has been